Chris Olave. So maybe this is what he needs to get over the hump is me calling him a bust because of my track record with that last year. I don't see it. Everybody seems to love him. And maybe it is. I totally get the argument. The Clint Kubiak, he's bringing the Shanahan-inspired offense to the Saints. They're going to use more motion, and they're going to get him in advantageous situations and the layup targets that the Shanahans are known for, adding those kind of easy target branches to the route tree. That could go a huge way if they do that. And we saw a little bit of that so far this preseason, 94% route rate and a 46% target share from Derek Carr so far. That's pretty impressive and pretty encouraging, which has me like a little shaky. But then I look at it and I think, okay, well, it's coming from Derek Carr. And Derek Carr has been just god-awful these last few seasons. And I just don't know. You also look at the fact that the motion has not been there. And maybe it's preseason. They don't want to give their hand away. But they've been bottom 3 in motion rate so far this preseason. They have not been really moving him around at all. And I just look at the guy, and historically, you're talking about a guy that has been top 12 in only 5 of 31 games across his NFL career so far. That's 16%. That's really not solid. 3 top 12 games last year. And maybe he's just not as talented as we all believe. The wide receiver 25 and wide receiver 22. You want to take him as a wide receiver 2 in round 4 or 5? Yeah, it'd be great there. But mid-round 2, early round 2, at times in best ball, no thank you. Yeah, of course, he had the 3rd most unrealized air yards, 72nd in target accuracy. That is like, yeah, he maybe is talented, but just getting hampered down. But again, same guy is still a quarterback in Derek Carr. So, yes, maybe the scheme changes will help him out. Maybe an expanded route tree and layup targets can balance out the floor a little bit. I just see a guy that I think everyone – I don't know. It is tricky because there's been glimpses that this guy is really damn talented, but also why is he not – usually the real true alphas, those true guys that are getting drafted where he goes, are able to elevate no matter who their quarterback is. And I just don't know that Chris Olave is one of those guys, and he still has the quarterback that's been the reason he sucked, apparently, according to everybody. So I don't know. I don't fully buy him at this price. I'd much rather go Drake London, Mike Evans. Nico Collins goes almost a round after in redraft him. Deebo Samuel goes after Chris Olave, which is absolutely asinine. Like, Deebo Samuel's a monster. I would go any of those guys 10 out of 10 times over Chris Olave. So needless to say, I don't have any of them this year.
Look, I'm a big believer in like the best receiver on a not great team. Mo, I remember, was in on Nico Collins early last year, basically using that exact same logic. I'm pretty sure it was Mo. And there's guys that I like in that situation this year. I just don't like him. I think the Saints are going to be absolutely terrible.
Yeah,
I really do. I'm fading every single person on the Saints. I don't care what's going on. As far as you saying, like the true alpha dog receivers, they should be able to elevate no matter who their quarterback is. Well, I mean, you remember when DeAndre Hopkins, who is amazing, his career was ruined by Brock Osweiler, right? There are exceptions to that statement, no matter how good you are. I just don't see it for Olave this year, especially where he's going so high.
I think it's a great point, too, bringing up the whole team. Like, if I had to make a bet today, who's the first coach to get fired this year? I think Dennis Allen is by far the top of that list, and I know that shouldn't necessarily impact the offense, but if it's just bad vibes, horrible game after game, the line looks so bad. So, again, maybe they have to get it out quicker to Olave, or maybe it's just another season of 100 checkdowns to Alvin Kamara. While Mo gives his take, I am going to try to look up. I had a stat saved that I forgot to put in this, and it's from Josh Norris, and it's related to the highest wide receiver finish inside like a bottom 10 offense is X. And it's not high. And maybe they were number, I know, Mo, you've always corrected me on this. They were like top 9 in points per game last year. So maybe they aren't as bad as we expect. But I don't know. I think this team's going to combust.
Their line, I think, is terrible also.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of my Saints bashing. Mo, what do you think about George Pickens this year? And why do you think he's going to not live up to expectations, which I happen to agree with you on as well?
Well, let me comment on Chris Olave real quick. You might have seen me sitting there for the last 3 minutes with a shit-eating grin on my face.
I did. I was.
After I've been drafting Chris Olave in round 2, my fair share. It's just like you said. Yeah, it was a top 9 offense last year. Like, no matter what everyone's like perception of the offense was, top 10 in points per game. I just can't wait for him to realize those air yards. And he's just not. I've just got faith that this guy is just the true alpha of this offense. He could be up there for the league leaders in targets this year, and with some targets that aren't just pure go routes. It was absolutely insane. I heard a stat. It was with Matt Harmon from Reception Perception. It was somewhere along the lines of 7%. 7% of Chris Olave's routes his rookie season were slants. That was the lowest rate he had ever charted in the history of Reception Perception. And they were just misusing this man beyond belief. And this is a narrative that has been kind of peddled throughout the offseason. And Pete Carmichael has been the offensive coordinator in New Orleans for some time now. And this is going to be the first time in over 2 decades that it's not a Sean Payton crony running the show in New Orleans. We're finally getting some fresh ideas. We're finally going to hopefully get a better route tree, better usage for Chris Olave. So I'm betting on the talent here and his ability to dominate the target share market and succeed based on talent and improved usage. But once again, you can't argue with the failures here and there or throughout the first 2 years of his career. And there is a very real chance that this offense implodes. So there's reasons to fade him. Like the Anthony Richardson take, I will not be fading him, but I understand why. But moving on to my pick, which is George Pickens. Speaking of an expanded route tree, people are expecting this out of George Pickens. This guy runs a route bush, man. This is no tree. This is a guy who runs nothing but go routes. It's just not. I don't know what people are thinking they're going to get out of George Pickens this year. So the biggest thing here is this is the most 40 IQ, no thought take of all time. But just fade the wide receiver one in an Arthur Smith offense. Since Arthur Smith has been an offensive coordinator or a head coach, it's 2 years as the offensive coordinator in Tennessee, 3 years as the head coach in Atlanta. The wide receiver one in terms of their fantasy finish in Arthur Smith offenses. Wide receiver 21, A.J. Brown. Wide receiver 12, A.J. Brown. Wide receiver 38, Russell Gage. Wide receiver 31, Drake London. Wide receiver 37, Drake London. So I think 2 of the 3 wide receivers on that list, which are A.J. Brown and not Russell Gage, A.J. Brown and Drake London, are immensely talented and far more talented than George Pickens. And I know some people are going to give me some pushback on Drake London just based on how he's produced, but I will stand here and tell you that Drake London is 100% a far more talented wide receiver, and he could not overcome the nonsense that Arthur Smith is doing out there. I mean, you hear this guy in the preseason discussions, just what he wants to do with this offense. He's talking about running the ball on 50% of his plays. He's saying things along the lines of, if we run 1,000 plays this season, I want 500 of them to be carries. It's just absolute nonsense what this guy wants to do with his offense. And people are still somehow okay taking Pickens as a fringe wide receiver too. He's being drafted as the wide receiver 27 in round 5 right now. It's lunacy to me that people are buying in to a guy who is less talented than guys who have failed in Arthur Smith offenses before. And the people who are buying in, they're latching onto a 4-game sample. I learned my lesson last year, latching onto a small sample size last year with Cam Akers. And the 4-game sample without Deontay Johnson last year, it's promising. 28.6% target share, 3 yards per route run, and 16.6 fantasy points per game. So they're promising numbers, but this is a 4-game sample. And across a full season, I just don't see Pickens producing at these numbers. I don't think he's that kind of target earner. I don't think he's the type of guy who has a full route tree in him that's going to see all sorts of targets that aren't just these contested go route, jump ball type of targets. It's just, that's not what George Pickens' game is. And I don't think he's going to do that. And I don't even think Arthur Smith needs or wants him to do that, considering how many times they're going to run the ball. And then we haven't even gotten started on what the quarterback play is going to look like. I mean, I understand that it could be an upgrade from what we saw out of Kenny Pickett last year. But I mean, you watched that preseason game, Wolf. It was heinous out of both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. I mean, everyone just made fun of Russell Wilson relentlessly last year for how terrible he was. And yeah, Justin Fields, I mean, as much as we love him for fantasy because of the rushing stuff, I mean, this guy is not an NFL quarterback. And I'm an Ohio State fan, like sitting here and telling you this, like I should be as biased as they come when it comes to Justin Fields. And I'm telling you, this guy is not an NFL caliber quarterback when it comes to passing the ball. He legitimately looks like he's out there on a tape delay. It's just not someone. It's just not someone that I want to be investing. Like this is not an offense in general that I want to be investing in outside of the running backs, and it's just set up for this just to be a total disaster. If someone is gonna overcome the Arthur Smith offense, it's someone like AJ Brown. But he is just a completely different level of a receiver than George Pickens. They're not on the same level. AJ Brown is an alien alpha wide receiver that George Pickens is not. I will not be taking any pieces of the passing attack in this offense this year. George Pickens is one of them. Give me Anthony Richardson in this range. I know you want to fade him, but give me Anthony Richardson over George Pickens. Give me Kyle Pitts over George Pickens. Oh. I would much rather have either of those players than George Pickens in the middle of round 5. And I can save my Kyle Pitts rant for another day, but it is so easy for me to pass on George Pickens this year.
I mean, I completely agree with you on your Pickens take. I mean, and Justin, I wrote a scathing article for RSJ. I don't write that many articles. I wrote an absolutely scathing Justin Fields article last year. It was after he had finally had one good game. We basically like, should you sell him? And I was like, yes. And I made a very compelling case. And then he had just a phenomenal game the next week, like just put up like 50 fantasy points. And I did eventually end up being right, but there was a week or two where I looked like an absolute moron for that. But yeah, you're right. He does not look like an NFL quarterback at all. The only reason I was gasping and stuff is you're throwing out some pretty terrible names around that you'd rather have than Pickens. And to me, it's kind of like, do you want to take a Chain or a Barkley at the end of the first round? And then you kind of dodged it. And we're like, neither. I don't want any of those guys.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I all of them have their reasons. I just think the Pickens is the biggest evil of the bunch.
That's fair. Yeah. Who's going to throw him the football? Right.
I agree too, by the way. I do want to bring up that 4-game sample. He was on pace in the games without Deontay Johnson, 140 targets, 72 catches, 1,517 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Would have been 246 points or the wide receiver 6 last year. But I also fully acknowledge that was a different offense, different QB, 139 yards on the preseason game where they started Russell Wilson and Justin Fields the entire game against third stringers and only put up 3 points. I'm with you. I don't want any piece of this. I've definitely changed my Pickens take. I do like the player a lot. I think he is more than you're giving him credit for as a talent. There's actually a stat. I saw Fantasy Points Data posted it. He was in like the top 7 in yards after catch when given opportunities. So I think there is more that Pickens can do, but I also don't think Arthur Smith is going to demand that of him, and I do not trust the quarterbacks to do it either. So I'm definitely with you. I'm fading this entire passing game, other than maybe taking like a last-round best ball stab at Fields himself, not for the passing upside, but for the rushing upside. Yeah, I think he's a good fade for sure. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.